Okay, welcome everybody. We are starting our 12 o'clock program here on the outside stage. Again, my name is Paul Swiden, and I'm very pleased this morning to welcome local author Cameron Chittock. Cameron is an award-winning comics editor and the author of the Mapmakers Kids graphic novel series. Today is a very special occasion because we get to launch the second book in Cam's Mapmakers series called Mapmakers and the Enchanted Mountain, which I have read and is fantastic. And we're really excited to have him here. So if you could please give him a warm round of applause.
Yeah. Hey everybody. First of all, I just want to say this is like shout out to everyone at Silver Unicorn because this is the coolest thing ever. When I was a kid, which was not that long ago, I promise, we did not have graphic novels for kids like this. So the fact that every bookstore you go into, there's this many books, the fact that a bookstore like this can get 2,000 people to come read graphic novels for kids is just awesome. So I will, for the plan here, I'm going to talk a little bit about, give you a little bit of background about myself, talk about the Mapmaker series, and then I want to open up to questions. So if you have questions about, if you read the first book and you have questions about the first book, you have questions about the second book, questions about what it's like writing comics, making comics, how it all comes together, be thinking of those, and I'll turn it to you all here in a second. So my name's Cameron. Like Paul said, I used to edit comic books. And now I've been writing comic books. This is the Mapmaker series. I'm the author, the writer, and Amanda Castillo is the artist. And so we collaborate on everything really together in terms of the story. We bounce ideas off each other. And then Amanda, in the first book in particular, Amanda, everything you see on the page, the line art, the colors, the lettering, that's all done by Amanda. The Mapmakers series is about a young girl, Alade Rose, and her best friend, Lewis. And Alade discovers this magical map of her hometown, and the map brings to life Blue, this great blue heron, who then offers to teach Alade how to become a map maker. It's very much a fantasy adventure series. It's a series about going off into the wider world. Very much a series about friendship and Alade and Lewis's friendship, which I think is at the heart of the story, and about magic and magical maps and talking animals. I would say that the sort of origin of the series started with, I don't know if anybody here, any of you guys read fantasy books? Have you read fantasy books before? And you know how usually, like in the beginning of the book, there's a map, right? There's it's kind of this usually very detailed of this made-up place. Every time I've read a fantasy book, I've always just been fascinated by those. I've always loved the details, loved the crazy made-up names. And so my initial kind of kernel idea for Mapmakers was, okay, what if one of those was magic? What would that look like? How would that work? And then the second piece of it, so I'm from Cleveland, Ohio originally, and I was living in Los Angeles at the time, and now obviously I live in Massachusetts. And I was growing up, or even when I was in Los Angeles, was very proud of where I was from, very proud of being from Ohio. But I also loved being in someplace new and exploring someplace new. And when I realized that writing about maps was kind of a chance to write about places and what they mean to us and how they shape us, places where we're from, places where we can go. That's where I kind of knew there was something a little more there. The first book, Alade and Lewis are really in their home valley and learning about where they come from. And the second book, The Enchanted Mountain, they go off and they explore somewhere new. So they go off to a totally new place. We meet new characters. It's a new setting. Amanda has incredible designs of this inside the mountain. There's this whole community there, and there's just really beautiful art for that community. Yeah, these are the first two books of this series. The last one comes out next April. So we're launching book 2 here, and then the last one comes out next year. All right, so any questions about comics? You have a microphone there, but you can also just stand up and yell. Whatever works. Yeah. Great question. So the question was, what are some of the books that inspired me? So I've loved fantasy stories for a long, long time. Whether it's The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, the Narnia books. Those books have always kind of really captured me. I love the idea of being able to go off into some fantastical place. So those are definitely part of the inspiration. And I also love stories with that are about friends, that are about friendship. So that was kind of the real start of that. And I think wanting to, again, like not having, as much as I love those fantasy stories as a kid, there weren't graphic novels that were kind of in that same sort of call to adventure structure the way a lot of those stories were that I was growing up. So yeah, those I think were the biggest inspirations for sure. But then I also love like talking animal stories, so there's a little bit of Calvin and Hobbes in there, because Alidade is very much, Alidade wants to go out and see the world, and she's a little daring, a little adventurous, and Blue, the heron, is a little bit of a grump, and so they kind of have an entertaining back and forth, and there's definitely a little bit of Calvin and Hobbes in there as well. If anyone here has not read Calvin and Hobbes, it's perfect, it's wonderful, highly recommend it. Yeah. The question was, what got me into graphic novel making? So I first discovered comics. When I was a kid, I was at my grandparents' house, and I was up in their attic, and I found this dusty old box in my grandparents' attic. I had my father's copies of his comics from when he was a kid. So he had old Spider-Man comics, Casper the Ghost, Archie, and I read those like over and over and over. And for whatever reason, there was something always about the combination of words and art as means of telling a story that really kind of captured me. And then when I got a little older, I had a teacher in high school who was kind of teaching us about story structure. And at that time, I loved, like I said, I loved Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, Harry Potter, Spider-Man, all these kind of stories. And when we were talking about story structure, all these things I liked, there's clearly this kind of connective tissue. And I realized that, these stories aren't just appearing, like someone's making these, someone's telling these. And so that's when I really started writing. The other piece I would say is that I can't really draw very well. I like to doodle, but I'm not I've never been really an artistic person in that way, but I love art. And so the way in which you can be a comic book writer and collaborate with an artist and work with an artist was really exciting to me. And there's nothing better than like sending Amanda an idea for a story or idea for a character, and then seeing, getting an email or a text back with the initial sketch or the colored image, and just seeing like words be turned into art is just really, really cool. So that's definitely partly why I like to write comics in particular. So the question was, why did I choose a blue heron? So when I was growing up, it's a great question. When I was growing up, I lived right next to a pond. And there were ducks and otters and all sorts of animals, but there was always a blue heron on that pond. And for whatever reason, I always just thought they were the coolest bird. They're kind of weird. They kind of have a weird walk, but they're always kind of standing still, and they just look very regal and elegant. When I knew I wanted there to be, I wanted the memory, which is the magical animal. I knew I wanted it to be a little bit cantankerous, a little bit of a grump, and for some reason there was something about seeing this elegant bird who was also kind of grumpy, and there was something about that I just found kind of funny. But I've always loved the blue heron as an animal. It's probably my favorite animal. What's my favorite Spider-Man? Great question. I could talk an hour just about that. Peter Parker's my favorite Spider-Man. I do love Miles Morales. Miles Morales is great. There's a Miles Morales graphic novel that the subtitle of which I'm now blanking on, but they probably have it here. It's a kid's graphic novel. It's really, really good if you have not checked it out. I think Jason Reynolds wrote it. But yeah, I mean, you can't go wrong with any Spider-Man. They're all great. Favorite type of bird? I would probably say, I mean, the heron, of course. Although I do love owls. I will say so in each book, as they kind of go to a different land, and we'll work to kind of make a map of that place. Each one of these magical maps kind of creates this memory, this magical animal being. And for a while, I just wanted all of them to be birds. It was going to be like heron, and then owl, and then cardinal, and I was just going to really lean into the bird thing. And we ended up kind of each territory is a different animal, and there's, as you can see on book 2, there's a mountain goat, which we figured makes sense with the mountain. I won't say what book 3 is, but each one has a different animal. But I love owls as well. Yeah.
What's your favorite book that you've made so far?
Favorite book that I made so far. So I will say, book 2, so the Enchanted Mountain was far and away the hardest book. I rewrote the entire thing, so I finished the whole book, and then kind of stepped away for a little bit, came back and read it, and thought, that's not good. So went back and kind of rewrote the whole thing. So it was definitely the hardest book. It's not a strategy I plan on doing ever again. I'd like to get it right on the first time next time. But I think it is the book that I think I'm at this point most proud of, for sure. And like I said, the designs that Amanda has in this book, particularly of the community in the mountain, are just like incredible. And I think Amanda really kind of came into their own on this book, and so getting to see their work and the character designs, and so much of comics art is the acting of the characters, and I think we introduced some new characters in this book as well that really mean a lot to me. So yeah, this is probably my favorite one so far. But I'm sure if you ask me a year from now, hopefully I'll say it's the third one. But yeah, right now that's definitely my favorite. Yeah.
Talk more about collaborating with Amanda. Like, did you know each other beforehand? Do you like something like panel and then she illustrates?
Yeah. Yeah, so the question is about collaborating with Amanda, and kind of how that process works and what that looks like. So the story started, I had a rough idea of the story. I had the characters and kind of a synopsis for each book, and then our editor, Whitney Leopard, was the one who kind of paired us together. So Whitney sent me samples of a couple different artists, and Amanda was the one that we were kind of most excited about from the jump. And from our very first phone conversation, Amanda and I just really clicked. And what was really cool is, as a writer, I had this very long document that had way too long and way too many words, trying to convey what I was hoping the story would be. And the first time I spoke with Amanda, in like 2 sentences, Amanda summarized what the series was about, and just like so eloquently, in what I had been trying to do in like 5 pages. So we really kind of clicked right away. And so the process is, I write the script, goes to Amanda. Amanda does layouts first, and in the back of each book there's some process, so you can see the kind of different stages. But the first step is layout, so they're really kind of loose drawings, and it's just so that Whitney, the editor, and I can look and see how Amanda's planning to kind of approach each page. And then there's line art, which is the black and white art, and then colors, and then the balloons and letters come last. But in each one of those steps, we're kind of collaborating, going back and forth. So when I send a script or send the outline to Amanda, both Amanda and Whitney are then coming back with ideas and feedback. A lot of time Amanda and I will get on Zoom or the phone and just kind of talk through story ideas and just jam things out. And then as the art comes in, I'll give feedback as well. And sometimes it's, what I try to do with the scripts is, you want to be detailed enough that the artist knows what should be in each panel and what should be on the page, but you want to be loose enough that the artist has the freedom to kind of really put their own ideas and their own creativity to it. If I'm doing my job well, I'm setting that artist up for success, and I'm setting them up to really shine and let their voice and style come through. So sometimes if I'm looking at a layout, my feedback is, hey, you went a little away from the script. maybe I'll change the dialogue here so that it works with what you did because I like that better. Or sometimes they'll do exactly what I wrote, and I'll think, that doesn't really work. I need to rethink this, and I'll say, okay, man, let me take another crack at this scene, and I'll kind of do another version of it based on what didn't work or what I thought could do better. But there's a lot of back and forth. It's very collaborative. We're very much a team in that way, which is the most fun part about all this is having kind of that collaborative and spirit and that sort of teamwork. So yeah.
Talk about getting on Zoom. How has the pandemic changed the tools that you're using?
Yeah, so the question was, how has the pandemic changed the tools that we use for every aspect of this? I would say Amanda and I probably mostly did phone calls prior to the pandemic, and I think that's been a one positive thing for us because we have always lived on opposite sides of the country. I've never actually met Amanda in person, which is very strange, but that's one of the great things about Zoom is that we're able to just hop on calls together, and Amanda will share the screen, and a lot of times, sometimes Amanda will literally just kind of sketch something while we're on the call, or can pull up different in process pieces as they go. Amanda also does everything digitally, so it's really easy to basically screen share and see what they're drawing on their tablet, and so you can kind of see those process. So that's been really great. There's also been, I think in terms of launching the book, or now with the books out there, we did our first launch for the first book with Silver Unicorn, but it was a virtual event, and we were able to do, and Amanda was in California, but able to attend that. So that's something we certainly wouldn't have been able to do, and we've been able to do book conversations with schools, with libraries all over the country that was certainly not something that I was equipped to do or would have thought of prior to 2020. So that in some ways has been I think it's been really positive. It's kind of opened, you're not bound by the stores in your area, so that's been, or the schools in your area, so that's been really nice. But having a local store like this is really great. Oh, yeah. Yeah, great question. Yeah, so the question was about transitioning from being an editor, which I used to do, to then writing. And I always wanted to be a writer. The editing piece was kind of funny in that I had been interning at a comic book publisher, was offered a job to edit, and had just come out of college. I was like, oh, it's a job, great, I will do it. And but I really fell in love with it. You're more of a project manager as an editor. Your job is you're working with the writers and the artists and the designers, and you're communicating with the printers, and you're trying to, every one of these books, you're trying to make sure it is of really high quality, that everyone has a good experience making it, and that it comes out on time. But the best part about that was I got to just be a sponge, basically, because you're working with all these different writers and all these different artists, and the writing side was obviously really helpful. They were just getting to read other people's scripts, read other people's outlines, see how they approach stories, how they approach character, but honestly getting to work with the artists was the real kind of thing that really opened it up for me, because I had never really worked with an artist. I had been writing comic scripts since I was in high school, but no one had ever drawn them. I kind of wrote them and said, yay, good job, and then set them aside, and they didn't go anywhere. So I wasn't really familiar with what the art process was like, and what artists need and what artists looks for in a script. So that side of it was really, really beneficial to then, when I was actually writing again, just having the vocabulary and a better sense of how an artist is approaching each page. One thing a writer said that always stuck with me was that every page you write, you want to make it as exciting and as interesting as possible, because that is going to be, at best, one artist an entire day. Like, I could write 5, 10, 15 pages in a day if I'm in a good space, but for art, the art takes a lot longer, and so every page is an artist's entire day. And even just knowing that of the time commitment and how that is different for writers and artists, I think even that was really beneficial, because you have a better appreciation for how much work the artists are putting in to tell these stories. So yeah, it was really, I think I'm very grateful I had the editorial experience for sure, because I think it definitely taught me a lot about making comics and telling stories that I wouldn't have learned otherwise. One thing I'll say too about book 2 that was really, so in book 1, it was everything was set in the valley, which is where Aladane and Lewis are from. And I think one of the things we were most excited about for book 2, but also I think a little nervous about, was we had to go someplace new. You spend a whole book kind of building up this place, and then they leave at the end. So we had to kind of come up with a locale that was visually different, that was aesthetically different, that had a different culture to it, a different type of community. So in the book 2, the mountain folk are very much a kind of artist community. Their community and their culture is really built around art, whether it's painting or embroidery or pottery. So that was really like a totally different type of setting for us to really play around with. But then the other piece of that is, Aladane and Lewis, so much of that first book is them. They want to go out and see the world, and they're learning about where they come from in their own place. And when you get them into book 2, they're really kind of fish out of water. They are outside their comfort zone. I think in the start of the book, they're pretty fired up about that. They think they can really just there's nothing they can't do, and they really want to go off and do everything and see everything. And I think what's fun about this second book is that it kind of explores how when we go out to someplace new, how do we interact with the people, how do we learn about someplace that we're not from, and how do we help other people when we're outside of our comfort zone. So I think that was a really fun and challenging part about writing book 2, but I think part of why we really enjoyed that process.
So if the art takes this long,
Yeah.
and the writing takes this long, how many cycles do you do of the writing to try and get those synced up? Like, do you do just a bunch of different things?
Yeah, so the process, like I usually, we're both working at the same time, but Amanda, I'm always ahead of Amanda. My goal is to make sure there's never a point in which Amanda doesn't have something to draw. So I probably would starting the script to having the script finalized. I'll go through 3 or 4 drafts, and that'll probably take from start to finish 3 to 6 months maybe. And there are stretches there where you've sent the script in and you're waiting for feedback. The real like bulk of it is probably a 3 to 4 month stretch, where then drawing the book probably takes a full year. And so the first year, Amanda had signed on to the project but was still doing other work. I think actually Amanda was still in college at that point, so was going through their senior year. So I kind of had a head start. And then as soon as I'm done with the book 1 script, and that goes to Amanda, I immediately start the book 2 script. So Amanda right now is actively drawing book 3, and I haven't written book 3 in a year. So sometimes Amanda will send me stuff from book 3. I'm like, oh right, I forgot about that. Yeah. That happens. That's good, because we're kind of like always on different timelines. But yeah, you're always trying to stay ahead of the artist for sure.
So what does that mean for you now? Right? Like, what are you doing if you're going through the next thing and waiting for the last one to catch up?
Yeah, so I mean, it's been nice for the first, throughout the Mapmaker series, I've always kind of had the next Mapmaker script, but it is a 3-book story, so the 3rd book is the final book. So I've got other projects coming out that are not, many of them are not announced. We just got announced yesterday that I'm writing a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Stranger Things comic that'll come out in July. But yeah, so it's a lot of it's as soon as the 3rd book was done, it's like, okay, I got to try and find the next set of projects, and then hopefully Amanda and I will do another book together as well once Mapmakers is done. But they still got a little bit of a ways. I think the book 3 art and everything will be complete next month. So we're getting to the finish line, which I'm sure I'll be very emotional about when we get there. But I'm just gonna push that aside until we get there.
You were doing scripts in high school. How did you make the jump from this is something I do for fun on the side to this is something I do like as the thing I do?
So the question was how I went from doing scripts in high school to this becoming the thing. And I would say I think I knew in high school this is what I wanted to do to some extent, for sure. I ended up going to college for writing, and I knew I wanted to write comics. That's what I wanted to do. I did not know of a school at the time which I could major in that, but I majored in screenwriting, which visual writing, so there's some connective tissue there. But yeah, I think as soon as I got bit by that writing bug in high school, I was pretty in. And I think, you know, even though I knew I wanted to write comics, and that was kind of really where my passion was. I just loved story, and I just loved. The reason why it all kind of started in high school was just seeing, getting exposure to how stories work and the craft of them, and trying, you know, that process of trying to get it exactly right, and trying to understand what a writer is trying to say here, and what, you know, what's kind of happening underneath. What are the themes? What's the imagery that's being used? All that stuff just really kind of blew my mind in high school, and I just always was really attached to the stories that I loved. I was never like a passive reader. You know, those comics that I found when I was in like 5th grade, they're in dire shape right now because I read them so much. And I think, you know, because those stories had such a kind of profound impact for me, the idea of being able to tell a story that could potentially, you know, connect with somebody like that, that was just really appealed to me and feels like a nice way of kind of giving back.